So you have a teenager and you want what's best for them, but sometimes you just don't know what to do. I mean, we've all been there, right? Well, welcome to How to Be the Parent That Your Teenager Needs You to Be, where with each episode we explore the questions, the concerns, the issues, and the challenges that you face as a parent with a teenager. If your goal is to empower your teenager to be their absolute best and to bring the peace, joy, warmth, and love back into your home, then you've come to the right place. Well, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about developing a plan for social media and gaming within your family. So let's discuss. Well, hello again, everyone. My name is Jim White, and I'm an author, coach, and the founder of the Family Enrichment Academy. And today we're going to be talking about developing a plan for social media or gaming within your family. But before we dive into that, I did have a couple of items that I wanted to touch on. First of all, on behalf of your teenager, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your commitment to being a better parent and to grow. Having a growth mindset is just going to be critical as you move through these teenage years. In fact, that growth mindset is one of the fundamental elements of being an FEA hero and a part of our community. Now, if you're not familiar with our community or the Family Enrichment Academy, be sure to check out our introductory episode, which is episode 1 of this podcast. Now, the second thing I wanted to let you know is that I have a free resource for you today. One of the most common questions I get from parents with teenagers is, what is the secret to getting my teenager to open up and talk more? Well, the simple answer is to ask better questions. And so this resource I have for you, I have 10 questions you should never ask your teenager. Think of these as like conversation killers. And then I also have 10 great questions. These are the conversation starters. So again, it's a free resource. There's a link in the show notes. You can click on that link and go and download that and start, getting that teenager to open up right away. So let's move on to the topic for today. Today we're talking about social media. And this actually came up about a week or so ago. I got inspired to put together this particular episode because of something that I observed one night while we were out to dinner. My wife and I had planned to meet for dinner one night. Again, this is a week or so ago at one of our favorite pizza places. Is a place called Pies and Pints. It's become one of our favorites because they have this awesome street corn pizza. Well, on this particular night, we were going to meet, and I actually arrived at the restaurant about 30 minutes early. And I brought my computer, and the plan was to outline and work on my next blog post. So as I was walking into the restaurant, though, I noticed this family of 4 sitting at the table next to me. It was Dad was sitting there next to his 9 or 10-year-old son, and Mom was sitting next to like a 12, 13-year-old daughter. It had all the appearances of a pleasant family night out for pizza. Well, I set up my computer and the waiter came by and I ordered my iced tea. And as I was doing that, I noticed that Mom didn't seem to be enjoying the night out. What I saw was the son, the 9, 10-year-old, had like an iPad out and he looked like he was playing a game. The 12, 13-year-old daughter appeared to be sending a text or something like that on her phone, and the husband or the father was scrolling through what looked like a news feed or a social media feed of some kind. And all the while, Mom was sitting there in silence eating her pizza. And I may have been reading something into it, but I just couldn't help but feel that Mom seemed sad. Now, I bring this up, and again, this was a little bit of an inspiration for this particular podcast because I think this is becoming more and more common in families today. There's this whole, issue and sort of conflict, if you will, around social media and or gaming. And so I thought, I'll share a few ideas on it. So, first of all, I want to set some context for what I'm talking about here. So the goal with the conversation or the steps I'm going to throw out today is to engage with your teenager and co-create a plan for responsible use of social media or gaming. Now, the key phrase in this sentence is co-creating. The goal is to build some trust and create a plan together. So that's what I'm after. I mean, if you think about it, if you try to control or be real demanding around social media with your teenager, it's just going to lead to conflict. I mean, think about the pizza joint the other night. If mom would have demanded that everybody just put down their phones, and World War III might have broken out. If you may have experienced that. So control is a tough thing here. So the goal is, we talk about empowerment a lot, is to empower that teenager to make more responsible choices and co-create a plan together. So how do you do that? Well, the first piece of this is I want to remind you and encourage you to make sure that you're really firmly grounded in a love-based mindset before you open or start this conversation. I mean, this is going to be critical to building connection and trust with your teenager, is that you are grounded in love. And so, before you go into it, try to focus in and shift your intention or your attention to compassion, gratitude, and forgiveness. Those are three that seem to always help to ground us in that love-based mindset. And then the next thing I would say is you want to establish some common ground. And you could do that by saying something like this. I've got actually some actual example of how you might open up and get some common ground. So say something like, it amazes me how you can stay so connected to your friends on social media. Your world is just so different than mine was when I was your age. I mean, I heard, though, that sometimes social media can be used in bad ways. To me, social media seems kind of like a car. I mean, getting a driver's license and having a car can be really awesome for a teenager, right? I mean, the freedom to go places and have time for your friends. But at the same time, that car can cause problems if you aren't careful and make bad choices. Can you see how saying something like that, it creates some common ground? You're acknowledging that social media is an important part of their life, but at the same time, you're acknowledging that there are some risks there potentially, if not responsibly used. So again, creating that common ground would be the next step. Then the next thing I would do is seek to understand them. Try to listen and engage with them in a way that you, again, are trying to seek to understand them and creating some connection with them. And you do that with open-ended questions. So you could ask a few questions like, for example, what do you like most about social media? Or what would happen if you spent a whole day without getting on your social media? I mean, what would that be like? That's always an interesting one to see what they think would happen. You could say something like, have you ever seen a situation where social media has been used and hurt someone? And if they answer yes, and say, well, what happened? Try to dive into that. And then another one that's kind of an interesting one to ask and have a conversation around is, and this is true, some colleges now are starting to look at the social media of the students that are applying to get in as part of the application process. And so you could ask your teen, what do they think about that? Should colleges be doing that? Now, as they're providing their answers, this is where it's real important that you try not to slip into fix-it mode or lecture mode here. The point is to try to get them to open up and engage, and again, for you to have a better understanding of their views around social media and gaming. So again, be very careful there. So once you're at that point, then you're ready to sort of introduce the idea, let's co-create a plan together. And here's an example of what you might say to get that started. You could say, I really appreciate you sharing so openly. I feel like I've learned a lot and have a better appreciation for what's going on in your life. And I can see how social media, or if it's gaming that you're talking about, but I can see how social media is an important part of your daily life. But to be honest, I have some concerns about the risk. I think that the best way for you to enjoy the benefits of social media while it's at the same time reducing or minimizing that risk is for us to come up with some guidelines together. I mean, that seems fair, doesn't it? Can you see how if you say it that way, you're again acknowledging that social media is here and it's an important part of their life, but at the same time there are some risks, and you're going to work together with that teen to come up with some guidelines that work for both you and the teenager. So again, we're back to that co-creating of a plan. So here's your FEA Hero Challenge. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Over the next 3 days, all good challenge, we've got a little time frame here, so try to do this in the next 3 days. I want you to open up the conversation about co-creating a plan for social media or gaming. And use those 4 steps that we've outlined above. The first one is get very grounded in love. Then create some common ground, establish that common ground. And then third, seek to understand, try to get in and understand what's going on for them. That's just huge in building trust and confidence trust and the connection between you and your teen. And then finally, introduce the idea of co-creating a plan together. So that's your FAE Hero Challenge for the next 3 days, is try to get that conversation opened up. So as we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say to that mother in the pizza joint that it is possible to reestablish that connection with your family. And it is possible to have, bring the joy and engagement back to your family dinners. But it all starts with you taking that stand and you becoming the hero within your family. And I would encourage you and invite you to take on this FAE Hero Challenge as well. So with that, I just want to remind you again that I do have that free resource for you, those 10 questions you should never ask your teenager, and the 10 great questions, the ones you should be asking. So be sure to click that link in the show notes and download that resource for yourself. As always, it's truly an honor to be able to serve and support you as you move along your parenting journey, and your journey is the hero within your family. It's just truly an honor. Until next time, remember, a change in perspective changes everything.